the true meaning between the dream and the calling, like we've talked about in other episodes, is when you know when it's a calling that it's not going to give up on you, and you owe it to yourself and your soul.
Yeah.
Who are you now? There was you before April 11th.
Yeah.
And there's you today.
No, but you won't let me forget it. What did I say?
They took the breathing tube. They intubated you. And the first thing you said when they pulled that out is, "Can you say this?"
All right. Well, welcome to She Means Millions. We are going to be talking about a really interesting concept, and it's the concept of 1%. And the story behind that is a lot deeper than just a percent or a number or a very low possibility. It's multi-pronged. It's multi-tiered. At the Women Network, our mission is to help 1 million women each achieve $1 million in annual revenue, and less than 2%. In fact, 1.7% of women actually do that.
In the U.S.
Mm-hmm. And so our mission is to change that. And 1% is also very near and dear to our family's hearts because 2 years ago, I had a bit of a health crisis, a near-death experience. And
No, it wasn't near death.
It was death.
You died. No, technically.
Yeah.
Technically, that's what they said. You died.
Yeah.
I brought you that.
Yeah. And so, I was clinically dead for 45 minutes and came back kind of a vegetable.
Yeah.
Couldn't really walk, couldn't talk.
One eye was straight. The other eye was to the left. They put a spoon in your hand. You didn't know what it was, what to do with it.
Yeah.
Involuntary movements, your arms and legs. You couldn't control what your arms and legs did. They were just flailing.
Yeah. And the doctor said I had a 1% chance of recovering.
That was before, that was while you were in an induced coma on life support, she said. We should be focusing.
Yeah, the emergency room doc, the 1% chance was an upgrade. Because the emergency room doc, when he came in to see us, your husband, me, told us that it was not looking good. You need to make alternate plans. And I looked at him like, what are you trying to say to me? And right now, it was like, he was pretty clear, but I couldn't hear it. I couldn't hear those words. Yeah.
And then they kept you alive until I got there because I was in Denver rushing to get back. And I was walking in, I looked at you, and then I went over to the nurses, like, what's going on? And she said, take your time. We've got her comfortable until you come to terms. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I mean, I just was like, and then I walk into the room, and right about then the neurosurgeon, Dr. Poon, came in, and she said, I give her 1% chance to live. She doesn't have the brain waves. She doesn't have that. It's just been too hard on her body. But she's comfortable right now. And she walked out. And I walked over to where she was, and I just leaned into your ear and said, just rest. Take your time. It's okay. They say you got 1%, and you've always been a 1%er, so here we go. And I had, as a mother, I had to draw my own meaning because I was unwilling at that time to hear it as a death sentence. I couldn't do it. I couldn't look at you and I couldn't do it.
Yeah. And from there, I did wake up. Some some progress was happening, very slow
Very
progress.
slow.
Progress.
But you weren't squeezing anybody's. They said, get her to squeeze. Keep talking to her. We'll know her brain is working. If
She can respond.
if she can squeeze, put your finger in her hands and see if she can squeeze it.
Yeah.
And I was standing behind Travis. I was kind of scratching his back, up and down his back. It was freezing in there. He had a red sweatshirt on, and he never left your side. I was worried about him. He seemed weak and worried. And I just went behind him, and then suddenly he just collapsed on top of you. He's 6'4", 6'5", however tall he is. And I knew instantly without him saying anything. I just knew. And I just leaned over him. I said, did she just squeeze your hand? And he nodded yes. And then we got on this journey of, because you had kind of woken up involuntarily, you were thrashing. You did not know where you were, what was going on. You did not want that tube in your throat. And the nurses said, she's got to give us a thumbs up. She's got to do more than a squeeze. She's got to raise her hand, give us a thumbs up, and all of that. We worked and worked and worked with you every time you would, have some consciousness, which was fleeting. So we were always all there just for every second. And they're only supposed to have 2 people in the ICU room. They let us all there. They were just all there. They knew our family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they saw us praying over you. They sent the priest in, chaplain. He was a chaplain.
Mm.
And I looked at him, and last time I saw a chaplain walk into a hospital room was giving last rites to my mother. And man,
You were triggered.
I was triggered. I was like, what are you doing here? Who called you? Why are you here? And poor guy. And the nurses had just seen us praying over you. And he said the nurses thought you might like some of my support or prayer. And I said, just as long as you're not here giving my daughter last rites, because she is not ready for last rites. He says, no, ma'am, I'm not. And he ended up, his name was Gary. Remember, he ended up becoming a friend and checking on you a lot. And
I remember him. So he came back once I was awake.
yeah, he had a granddaughter your age. And so he was really moved by you, much older guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the journey to rebuild began. I mean, it was scary, and it was a haul. And they told us what got it was they were like 90 days. She's got 90 days to make 90% recovery. That's what we learn about TBIs, traumatic brain injuries. 90 days, and she'll have 90% recovery. And I'm like, well, let's get to it, because we're on the clock. You know what I mean? We got to make this happen. What needs to happen to, and you, it's almost like hard for me to even believe that it all happened, but you were the 1%. Even Dr. Poon, remember, Kym, at the very end, they would not give you an MRI forever because you had to pass all these other gazillions of tests. And finally they gave you the MRI. It was kind of the final thing. And she came back to give us the results. And it was like 8:00 at night, about 10 after 8, I think it was. And she said, I can't believe this, but I'm predicting she makes a full recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And I was across from her, and you were at the end of the bed by Brianna's feet. And you said, Dr. Poon, do you think we got a miracle? And it's the only time I ever saw her face, because she always had a mask on. And she pulled down her mask, and she looked at Kym. She looked at me, and she said, you got a miracle. There is no medical explanation for this kind of recovery. She says, this is God's work.
Let me ask you something, Brianna. If you had actually transitioned, was it peaceful? Like,
Yeah.
if it had ended,
I honestly, I don't think I ever I almost believe there's like an in between, because I don't ever remember going to heaven. It was almost like an out of body experience, and I can see Grammy's hand, and I could feel Grammy's hand on my hand, and I can hear her voice so clearly. And
Really?
yes, so it was almost like out of my body, because I could see and feel Grammy on my hand, and I felt her. She had the most distinct, the softest little hands. And I heard her voice, and all it said was "not yet." And that was my only memory from the other side. And
You don't recall like any pain.
no pain. I was in no pain.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. It was peaceful. I was peaceful. I was just comforted, and the only words were "not yet."
Mm-hmm.
You know? And
Which is ironic because I was praying to my mother because I knew my mother had a beeline to God.
yeah.
I just knew my mother would wiggle her little 4'8" way to like, excuse me, I get something urgent. Can you just excuse me,
Yeah.
do whatever the line was to get to God. I knew my mother. I was like, I'm praying to him, Mom, but I know you're there and I need your help.
Yeah. No, and she's always been my angel. Like I feel her all the time. But she was definitely with me then. And
What's the first thing you can bring consciousness to? You know, the first thing that.
well, I woke up. I wasn't in ICU when my first memory was on, I think, the next floor that they had moved me to.
So there's a lot you don't remember because you woke up in ICU.
Yeah, I don't remember waking up there, but
You don't remember what you said when they finally took the
no, but you won't let me forget it. What did I say?
they took the breathing tube. They intubated you. And the first thing you said when they pulled that out is, can you say this? Can I say it?
You can.
You can.
It's a podcast.
Okay.
I said,
I'm not paying for this shit. I was like, she's in there. We're good. She's in there.
That was
We
it.
just gotta bring her out.
Wasn't that after the MRI or no?
No, that was
Okay.
before the MRI because
Okay.
they wouldn't let her out of ICU without her getting the
and then they tried to take me down there, and I said,
no, they took her for the MRI.
yeah.
You scared them. You said, I'm not going in there. They're like, calm down, whatever. It took forever for us to get it approved through the insurance, a whole nother story. And then you said, you're trying to take advantage of my situation. You hadn't said 20 words in all the time, and you managed to string that together. They brought her up. I said, how'd it go? We didn't do it. We didn't do it. I said, what do you mean you didn't do it? Yep, she didn't want us to do it. She told us we were taking advantage of her. I'm like, she can't move and she has no use of her. Like, what is going on?
You don't remember that?
No, I don't. I just know the story.
They had to give you Valium to kind of put you out. Took another 2 days to get you down.
Which I guess they didn't want to do
That's
because
right.
then that impacts your brain
That's
function,
right.
your brain waves. So it would make them breathe lower. I mean, it's very on brand for me. So what can I say?
Exactly.
But no, my first like cognitive memory was waking up and seeing Travis sitting over me. And he just said hi. And I looked at him and I said, hi. And I said, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't remember what happened, why I was there.
Yeah.
And he started trying to explain to me, you went to this place, you got this procedure. And I was kind of a regular at this place. Like I had been there multiple times. So I kept saying, that was weeks ago, you know, and the last one that I remember, Priscilla was there with me. I was like, Pri was there. This was weeks ago. And he was like, no. And I was just in denial.
Yeah, you really struggled with acceptance of that. And the nurses had told us, just tell her what she asks. Don't give her too much information. She's got to take it in so that she can process it bit by bit by bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I remember rolling over and I think I just went back to sleep, you know, and
I think you just closed your eyes.
Yeah.
Rolling at that time, but
yeah, well, I remember
babe.
looking away. I remember my head
Yeah.
going away and going to sleep. And and I just that was my first memory.
Do you have any memory of the breathing tube going down?
No.
Because that was a really frightful scene when you had awakened.
Yeah.
Whatever degree of awakeness that
You started thrashing.
you start thrashing.
I'm grateful I don't remember that.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm grateful I don't remember the whole the feeling. You know,
You don't remember the helicopter.
I don't remember the helicopter. I don't remember going in, like seizing. I don't remember going into cardiac arrest. I just woke up somewhere. The last thing that I remember that day was saying, I feel woozy. And I couldn't even say the word woozy. I said, I feel oozy. And then it just is black
until
the hospital. Mm-hmm.
And then we started on this, well, you're a 1%er, so let's go.
Yeah.
Because, once you survived it and came out of it, you know what I mean? And you were starting to, your voice, I mean, I have recordings of your voice. It was, you were really learning how to
emote.
Yeah. And pronounce your words.
Yeah.
And,
my diction was so messed up.
Intonation was off. I mean, everything was just really off.
Yeah.
And the doctors would say, you just have to accept this could be the best she ever is.
I couldn't move my left side
at all. And you're a lefty, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, that might be the best she ever gets.
Do you remember?
But every time the doctors would leave, the nurses would say, give her some time. Give her some time. The nurses were so...
Yeah.
Not only just helpful, but hopeful. They loved you. And when you went back, because a lot of times when you leave, they never know what happens to you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I was struck by one of those nights. Travis was in the room with me, I'm pretty sure, and his mom and dad, Carl and
Desiree.
And a young lady came in, nurse, from another floor.
Yes.
She came in from another floor, came into the waiting room, and she came in and just kind of stood there. Like we were sitting there, and just stood there. Because we didn't know if it was someone coming in.
We were in the waiting area.
Yeah, to tell us something or whatever, And she says, I'm so thankful that we don't get this. She was communicating that they don't get good news. Like
she was on the ICU floor.
Foregone, you were. I think for them, at some level, you were gone. Like she's not going to come out of this, and for you to come out of this so impacted the other nurses.
Yeah,
I mean, it was something with your experience. I'm just saying something your experience that resonated with the hospital.
Yeah,
the nurses on the ICU who took such a love for you, and I'll never forget when you got out of ICU and moved onto the other floor. I'm in there with you. And that one nurse, the one nurse that said, one of the first signs of hope was that your eyes were retracting again. They weren't upon arrival, which is not a good sign. And so the nurses said, so anyway, I'm down on the other floor with you. And one of the main nurses, the one that said, we've got some good news. Her eyes are starting to show that they're starting to retract again, which tells us she's got some brain function going on. She came bolting through the door in the room, and I looked at her and said, oh, she was out of context because she was the ICU nurse. She says, I still have access to her charts from upstairs, and I'm looking, and I'm seeing that she's fully woken up, and she says, I had to come down here, but right before my shift starts, I had to come and see for myself. I mean, you were such a beacon of, hope for them.
And positive news,
Yeah.
It was.
Then they started to connect with you on Instagram and, all of that. And we went back and saw them and thanked them. And even the woman that brought your food trays.
Yeah.
When she saw you, when you went to that floor to see the nurses, she happened to be working day. And I remember her, she put her hands, over her cheeks to the side of her eyes. Like, is this who I think this is?
Yeah.
Remember? And she just finally walked over. She cried.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so, so what got us on all of this?
I think what it is, being given a 1% chance to live. And then going back to our mission and the 1.7% of women who make it.
Do you feel like you're drowning in your business? Like you're doing everything and something has to give, but you're afraid it might be you? What if I told you there's a network of over 500,000 women entrepreneurs, all dedicated to supporting each other? A network of women helping women. I'm Sandra Yancey, founder of eWomen Network, and I'm inviting you to join us and become a member. eWomenNetwork.com. We can't wait to meet you.
what it's really done for me now, lived that 1% experience, is it's created, I think, this really intense need for women to know, why not you too?
Why not?
You know,
Exactly.
1% is not an impossible figure.
Yeah.
It might be improbable, but never mistake the impossible and the improbable.
Yeah. Two different things.
They're totally different things.
Yeah.
And there is, sure, 99% people that might think otherwise or say otherwise or believe otherwise, but there's got to be, for that 1%, there's got to be somebody that's 1%.
That declares it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it happen.
It's a
You know?
decision.
It is a decision. E-Women Network is a 1% company, you know, and so my message really is, if you have just an inkling
Yeah.
that you could be a 1%er,
Yeah.
then all it's asking for you to do is take it by the reins and say, let's go.
Yeah. And it's slow progress is also still progress. And I think, you know, and to me, it's business, but it's life. I mean, we all are faced with crazy odds, you know, whether it's getting out of a horrific relationship, or you're dealing with your own health crisis, or someone you love is dealing with a health crisis, or maybe it's your children, or, you know, whatever it is. Maybe you're climbing out of a bad credit situation. Anybody and everybody is fighting something right now, or will fight something at some point in your life, and you will be told that it's too far gone, or you'll be told that it's not worth it. But the true meaning between the dream and the calling, like we've talked about in other episodes, is when you know when it's a calling, that it's not going to give up on you, and you owe it to yourself and your soul.
Yeah.
To fight for it with everything you've got. Yeah. I remember when we met the EMTs and the men who were responsible for keeping me alive for 45 minutes.
On the care flight.
Yes.
The helicopter.
Yes. And they are trained to only perform resuscitation or CPR for, I think, 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think it's less than that.
It's 15 minutes.
15, 20 minutes. And then they can declare you, deceased.
Yes. And they didn't stop. And I remember asking them, why did you choose to keep going? And they said, well, your heart, it just wasn't quitting. Like we would get a little flicker,
Electrical current.
a little electric current. There was
that wasn't beating. It had an electric current, so they knew the organ wasn't dead.
Yeah.
And they weren't going to give up on it. They said we could tell she was fighting.
Yeah. It's just interesting. It makes me emotional, but
sure,
it's to me, it's like when you know that when you can fight even when you don't realize you're fighting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you know.
Fight when you don't realize you're fighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like you're fighting, but you just aren't giving up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think more women find themselves with their backs against the wall, and they so just want to give up, and they so deserve to keep on pushing.
Yeah. I've had an epiphany during this conversation.
What's that?
We're 1% parents.
Yeah. So for the 2-year anniversary that just passed, because we're recording this right now in April. So.
Oh yeah, 10 days ago.
Yeah.
Okay. It'd be interesting to ask you this question in another 2 years or another 10 years.
Yeah.
Who are you now? There was you before April 11th.
Yeah.
And there's you today. How has this affected you, Briana?
Oh man, I started seeing a therapist because processing it all has been eye-openingly strange. I feel like the trauma of what happened impacted you all way sooner than it did me, because you saw the worst of it. You were receiving the news before I could even comprehend what was happening to me. And then for me, it didn't start to get heavy until like 2 years in, a little less than 2 years in, about around 2025, after I'd had Bryant, he was born with some complications, and who knows to what degree it was tied, because I conceived him like 3 months after the incident. So,
another reason why I just am like,
he was literally born 11 months after the incident to the day on March 11th at 11 p.m.
Yeah.
And he was a scheduled C-section. I wasn't supposed to have him that late. It was scheduled for 8 p.m., but there was reasons for why it was delayed, and they couldn't get that thing.
That early. He was early.
He was early. And it ended up being at 11 p.m. And it's so crazy to me. So I've, gotten to this place almost 2 years later where things are starting to seem normal. And I've got a healthy son. And I'm feeling like I've got my health, and I'm feeling like I found my stride. I'm feeling like I found my message. And I started to get this like wave of fear and anxiety, because that is the same feeling that I felt the day that April 11th, 2024 happened. I was on that feeling of I found my stride. Things are going really, really great. Yeah. And I've started to sense this fear of, I did start to sense this fear of, who's going to pull the rug from underneath me?
Mm-hmm.
When's the shoe going to drop? Because this feeling of things being good is
a trigger.
And that's not the Briana that I used to be. I used to only expect good things to happen to me, because I was a believer that if you're a good person, good things will happen to you. And what I learned is that bad things actually can happen to good people, and it's a really painful realization that sometimes there's just unexplainable things that we go through in life, but diamonds are formed under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And I started going to a trauma therapist, and it's really been powerful for me, because he had me write a letter to myself before the incident.
Mm-hmm.
And it really was a process of me grieving, because I'm not the same Briana that I was before.
That's right.
And I got to acknowledge all of the past versions of me that will never be the same, and accept that they'll never be the same. And I think through healing and doing the hard work and facing the hard things, it has helped me really reframe my belief that it's not, about the 99% that could go wrong. It really, life is not about living in the fear of that. It's about living in the possibility of the 1% that could go right. And just charging forward with this belief that you are a 1%er, and you can, and you have the capacity to be. But it wasn't handed to me. I didn't wake up and just, start walking and talking.
You were in therapy, all of them.
What
was it?
All
like
of the
7
therapy.
types of therapies or whatever for 8 hours a day. You said, Mom, this is like going to work. I said, and that's your job, to get better.
And I would go and I would see other people in there who just felt too defeated, and they kind of just showed up, and they weren't engaged, and they just, their circumstances were worse, and they just didn't see the point in trying, and that you can tell when a person's really trying, especially like in physical therapy, trying to walk again, or trying to lift, hold a piece of a pen and write on a piece of paper. You can tell people who really are truly putting every ounce of effort in to getting better and moving past their circumstance. And I was definitely one of them.
You were, because you were in 6 weeks after we got you out of the second hospital. You were in 6 weeks of full-time therapy. And at the end of that, they had all the therapists had a meeting with us. We were on it, and Travis was on it. His parents were on it. We were all, to get there. The common theme was, and they brought them in one by one. They weren't all the therapists weren't there at the same time. They brought the speech one in, the occupational one, the physical one, and one by one to give us their evaluation of you for that distinct therapy. To a fault, they were all like, well, Briana has no problems advocating for herself. It's like, okay.
Well, I did get to a point where I was aware enough that I know what my deficits are.
Yeah.
So if we're not working on those deficits, you're wasting my time.
You even said to them at one point, I'd like to bring in my laptop because there's some work I could do.
Yeah.
Well, if you could teach me this, I could color pictures or do long-handed equations, or I could get on my laptop and like look at my work, something I would really do.
Yeah, getting better at typing again is a skill I would like to get better at again. So can we do that maybe and focus on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. I got to that point, but I think that is the fighter in me.
It is.
And I think it's in everyone.
It
It's just a
is.
matter of if you want to tap into her.
Yeah.
So
And
Yeah.
then surround yourself with other people who are going to be the wind beneath your wings when you need it most.
yeah.
Because no one makes it alone. I mean, you take the lion's share of the commitment and the drive and the doing it. And you also knew you had a lot of love and a lot of people
support.
rooting for you and wanting to help do anything they could to make it
Prayers,
happen for
the
you.
prayers
Yeah.
were unbelievable.
Prayers of the community were just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. I think for anyone that's going through something challenging is to put a date on the calendar that gives you a sense of purpose. Like for me, that was an event that I was hosting in June. And I remember being in the hospital and you asking me if we should cancel it. And I think at the time I couldn't even hold a pen. And I didn't know how I was going to be well enough to do it, but there was something in me that was like, don't cancel it.
Yeah, you needed that as a drive, something
it
to look forward
was.
to. And I was like, I might be by her side. We might be both be sitting by her, but we are not going to cancel this.
Yeah. And I remember my first day when I went from inpatient therapy to outpatient. I was doing my onboarding for my outpatient. I was in my speech therapist office, and I told her, I've got an event on June 11th. I need you to get me better by June 11th. And she just was like, eyebrows raised, nodding. Okay, not gonna happen is what she was
Everybody
thinking.
thought
They
you
thought
were
I was crazy.
and we were crazy for supporting you in it. And you have to be a little cray-cray when you're a 1%er, Briana. You have to be different than majority of how people think, and you're it.
But I think that's our audience too.
Yeah, I do too.
Women entrepreneurs are also
Yeah.
a little cray cray.
Yeah.
We-
We know we don't belong in normal rooms. Those people are not our people. And so we had the 2-year anniversary about 10 days ago or so.
Mhm.
And when we were in the hospital, and it's funny how you remember this one.
Well, I actually don't. It was Chelsea.
Was it?
Yes. And then she said, your mom wrote in the Platinum Facebook group.
Yeah, I think I did.
You declared it. And so we never let you forget it.
Yeah, that we were going to get a family tattoo, 1% tattoo.
Yep. So if you're watching on the YouTube channel, you want to show the camera your tattoos?
But I have there we go. Does the ring come off?
Does the ring come off?
Well,
I mean, it had to for
So
you.
we got them on our wedding ring fingers. What it says 1%,
yeah, I don't even know how to.
like this.
I hope that doesn't look odd.
It's 1%. And the neat thing is you can't see it this way and you can't
She's
see it
really
this
proud of
way.
the secrecy of it.
I guess which camera are we looking at? This one over here, they're saying. So you can't see it this way or this way. But it's hard to do it to the camera, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you do it that way, it's right there. And when we put on our wedding rings,
It
we
covers
figured-
that.
we thought this was the most important place because we made you. It's a symbol of our love. And this finger and this ring represents our love for each other and therefore our love for you.
And your way to cover it.
And our way to and yeah, you'll have to go to Briana's Instagram to see the video of the whole family. I mean, Rylan got a big one, our son, your brother, and then Travis got a really big one, and then your girlfriends came and you got yours as a little 1%.
I did a
ring.
script.
Yeah.
Yes. So I spelled mine out. I don't know.
1%. And I love it. It represents 1% represents so much in my life.
Yeah.
You for certain, no question about it. And the fact that we've made it 48 years probably is another version of a 1%.
Yeah.
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 And to have a 1% company that's all about helping women who want to be 1%ers too.
Yeah. No matter what odds are stacked against you, even if there's a 1% chance that it could work out,
That's the flame.
that's the flame. And you can.
We will fan your flame
Yes, we
and
will.
help you blow that up to a full, explosive success story because you don't just mean business. She
means millions.
I'm alive. I'm alive.